Welcome back to Athlete's Pursuit. It's great to be back. It's been a minute since I've been able to get behind the mic, and I'm excited to dive into some things today. There's a lot to catch up on. The last couple months at Tonal have been busier than ever. I have been filming a new program. I'm working on something new for you guys that'll be coming out. I don't want to say too much about it other than I'm very excited. It's we have different formats on Tonal where you can. You have live format, and then you have some that, I kind of guide you through the workout and you do the lifts yourself. And this program specifically is going to be one where I'm in it with you the entire way. I'm going to be in the trenches with you guys. And I love filming programs that way. I think it's a different energy that I can kind of bring to it. I also think it's cool for subtle instruction to see how you can change movements and how you can lift differently to get different outcomes or different results. So I'm going to take you through a good program. I'm not going to say too much about it, but it'll be coming out next year. We got a lot going on this year that we're working on. So, it'll be some great projects coming up. That's my dog in the background, always on high alert. All right. So I want to thank you guys too for supporting the podcast. I've been getting a lot of great messages from you guys and comments, and I want to continue to use this as a way to just talk to you guys and try to help you all in any way possible. I wanted to dive into some of my background today. It was a question that I got of, if I could share more about some of my story related to training and, what got me to where I am. And what I can tell you is that it certainly was not a straight line. It was messy along the way. And when I coach, I think it's cool to understand or see my background, because when I coach, I relate and I have a lot of empathy for you. I see myself in every single one of you, in the general population, in all of our members, because I feel like I have absolutely been where you guys have been. I've made all the mistakes. I've worked in corporate. I've worked in a cubicle. I've worked in sales. I've been on the road. I've lived out of hotels and in cars. I've been abroad. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've trained for endurance. I've changed my diet. I've changed how I eat. I've counted macros. I haven't counted macros. I've done the vegan diet. I've done 30-day challenges. I've done online coaching. I've gotten coaches in person. I've had PDF programs that I used to follow. I would look at men's health magazines and follow different workouts. And back in the day, I would lift with bad form. I'm telling you that I did it all, man. I made all the mistakes, and I learned from them. There was a lot of adaptation that came through it, but I think it's important to share and talk about this stuff, because to me, this journey has not been neat and organized. And I think sometimes in the fitness space, it's packaged to you in this very neat and tidy kind of way. But that's not been my experience. I just wanted to... I don't know where this all really started for me, but I can tell you that ever since I was a kid, I was really interested in everything athletic. I know that I always played sports as a kid. I was always into team sports and like just improving and being athletic. And I loved movement. I loved how it made me feel. I loved the challenge. And as I got older, it started to become something where I started to tie it to even energy in my performance, like becoming my best every day. I started to be obsessed with, well, how can I keep my energy levels high? How can I sleep well so that the next day I'm feeling really good? How can I get into a routine so that when I get into my work on Monday, I'm going to hit the ground running and feel great, versus waking up and feeling sluggish and tired? Or why do I have these weeks and these months where I feel, just down in the dumps, versus sometimes I feel unstoppable? I wanted to be more consistent with it. Is kind of how it started in the professional world for me when I was in sales. Was kind of in a manner of performance, and it evolved a lot from there as I was trying to uncover a lot of these answers. But being where I'm at now, there's a totally different perspective on health and wellness that I have, and I feel like I've gotten into a really solid groove that is sustainable, that is getting me the results that I want. I feel good in the sessions that I'm going into. I'm not overreaching or overtraining. There's a smart approach to it. There's fatigue management. There's an understanding of your mental health and how to balance that. There's a sustainable approach to nutrition and a personalized approach that you can take. So my point is that there is an evolution, and there is a place that you all can get to where you find a very solid rhythm with balance with yourselves that works for you. I think that mastery is really personalization when it comes to training. There's principles that we follow to get you towards results that you want. But I have certainly learned that there is a balance between the science and the art of training, that yes, there are principles we need to follow so that we can get certain results that we're looking for. Like if it's build muscle, there are certain principles you need to follow to understand with how you lift and how you eat to get you that type of result. But within that structure, there is room to personalize. And I've certainly done that. You kind of learn as you go and you see all these different things. And if you can think about it as almost like a science experiment of, like I'm trying all these different areas of interest throughout my life of eating, of lifting, how to train, and you can start to narrow it down and be like, I really enjoy these things. I enjoy this part of this part. And you can craft this to be something that works for you. There's no one that says that you can't do that, right? That's really the goal. And I don't know if we talk about that enough, but that is certainly what I have been aiming to do. Because if I just follow these strict guidelines of I need to eat this every day and I need to count this much calories every day that add up to this, and I need to be very strict with my routine, and as far as like I need to do these types of lifts that somebody's, I got bored and I got very uninspired doing that. So when I write my programs, I do things that follow principles, but I also put in movements and just sequences that I also enjoy, like ways that I just like to move. It doesn't always have to add up to the most scientifically proven thing, in my opinion. When we're talking about general population and longevity, I don't think it has to be that way. So I want to, preface this, that as I go through some of like the things that I've learned like in my life, that you tie it back to that this is really just a journey of, it's okay to be messy. It's okay to be a little unorganized. I just never wanted to quit. And I wanted to get to this spot of stepping into my absolute best self so that I could ultimately be able to give more to people that I love and that I care about. That is really the anchor for me, is that if I can become my best, highest, if you can imagine that, like your highest version of yourself, the most confident, the most assured, the most empathetic, the most balanced, the most knowledgeable, and the best leader that you can be, then imagine how you have such a solid understanding and base for yourself, how much you can give back to other people without draining yourself. Right. And I'm a huge introvert, and I don't know if you guys know that. I mean, like doing what I do, I feel like it's a little bit counterintuitive, but I come from, what fires me up is a place of service. I just like to give back. And my struggle throughout my life has been, sometimes I've given too much to where it takes from me and it drains me. It empties my cup. And it's been this balancing act of how can I do that and give while also finding a balance so that I'm also giving back to myself, right? So that it's healthy and sustainable for myself too. And it's this balancing act that I found out with even energy management and the things that you pursue. So it's about being a leader and where this comes from. So diving into some of my background, the early days for me would be just my childhood was all anchored in athletics. Like I was doing baseball, football, basketball as a kid, with my father as a coach. And for whatever reason, ever since I was literally a baby, before I could even walk, I had like a baseball in my hand. I was playing sports since I can even remember. Before my first words, I was somehow involved in athletics. That said, I didn't have at that time, I didn't have a lot of great examples in my life other than my father with how to work, how to build a strong work ethic, how to develop discipline. He was really he was everything to me as a kid. I mean, my dad was my coach. When we played baseball, when I was playing t-ball, my dad was my coach. We would work out in the backyard. When I got into football season, he was the assistant coach. He was involved every step of the way. He would take me to practices. He would hire for coaches to work with me on the side. Like we would just hammer the skills, man. We were working our backyard and play catch and play different scenarios and work on the swing and throwing the football around. I mean, that dude was with me every step of the way. And the biggest takeaway from my childhood that I learned from my dad and from sports more than anything was about honoring your commitments. And this has stayed with me throughout my entire life. is, you know, there's a couple stories that I remember vividly being a kid that baseball was my primary sport. But there was, you know, I got into football, and my first year in football, you know, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, to be honest with you. I had only played like flag. I didn't know anything about tackle at that time. Again, I was playing baseball, and I got through the season, like halfway through the season, and I was telling my dad, like, I think I want to quit, and I don't think this is for me. And he said to me, he's like, you made a commitment to this team to be here for the season. So what you're going to do is you're going to honor this commitment. You're going to give everything that you have at every practice, at every game. You're going to go all out. You're going to learn. You're going to continue to develop, and you're going to finish out this season the right way. He said, at the end of the season, when it's all said and done, if you want to make a decision to not continue into next year, you can do that. You can walk away and just not sign up for next year. He's like, but you will never quit in the middle of your commitments. You will honor them the entire way through. You give your word, you honor your word, and you work through it. And that has stuck with me my entire life. That if I tell you I'm going to do something, if I say it to myself, I'm going to honor it. And then I will have the option, once I am done, to say, is this something I'm going to continue? That was a huge lesson that stuck with me. Another story that I remember from my dad, he was a contractor. You know, he was a man that worked with his hands. His work ethic was insane. When I tell you his attention to detail, working on homes in every way possible, it was meticulous down to the millimeter. This dude was, he did not allow for any miscalculation. It was like his work, you know, he always took pride in it because he was like, this is a representative of who I am and what I do. And so if you're working for me, like we would go on job sites with him. He's like, if you're doing work for me, like it reflects me. So you're going to do it to my standard. And it got another story that stuck with me. My brother and I were on the job site, and there was one day that we were sitting down after work with him, and he brings out like this wad of cash, and he was going to pay us for our day. And he paid us based off effort. So he looked at my brother, Chris, and he like just keeps throwing down these dollar bills. He's going like, boom, 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 boom. And he gives my brother like a pretty good chunk of money. And then he looks at me and he goes, 1, 2, 3, boom, way less. And I was like, what the is this shit? Are you kidding me right now? This dude did not. I learned hard that day. I was like, all right, so this man is honoring the effort too. I mean, Chris was working his butt off. I'm like, can I take a lunch and all that stuff? Yo, he would not let us slack, man. And so I learned a great deal from him of, you got to stick your head down and earn everything that you got. I mean, this man was tenacious, and that has stuck with me throughout my entire life. So I tell you that because this is a massive part of my DNA. It's an old school mentality. My grandfather was like this too. It was quality work. It was honoring your word. You know, it was, you know, you shake your hand and make a deal, you fucking honor it. And if you say you're going to do something, you do it. And if you're going to do it, you do it right. And you make it look good. Take pride in your work, or don't do it at all. And look, I don't know, man, call me old school for sure, but I feel like this has gotten lost a little bit today, where people are very obsessed with quick wins. And I have always been about the long-term, slow burn, earned the entire way. I don't like handouts. I want to earn this sucker. So again, that has stayed with me. Training for me evolved then. When we got to high school, I did not get introduced into weightlifting until my senior year of high school. So I did not have any role models growing up of people that were lifting. I also did not have role models of people that ate healthy. I can tell you straight up that my family, the way that we ate, it was Midwest, you know, a lot of casseroles, a lot of heavy dishes. My dad was not healthy either. That man ate like 2 meals a day, and it was like all at dinner. He was just slam dinners. He would do like intermittent fasting stuff. By the way, my dad, like at night too, would just like crush a box of ice cream. He would have a bunch of Hershey Kisses. He would kill dinner, and this dude would never lose. He couldn't gain weight. It was the most insane thing that I've ever seen in my life. So I did not have great examples of like how to eat healthy across the board in my family. In fact, when we went over to like my grandma's place, or we would have dinners, it was heavy, fatty meats, and I mean, Chicago style stuff, man. I don't know, like Italian beefs, big au jus sauces, and like greasy potatoes, and everything was like cooked in butter. It was just a lot. And I didn't understand this stuff at the time. We didn't even have guidance with breakfast and how these things affected your energy. So, you know, I tell you this to say I had to kind of I had to teach myself all about this. And at the time I was very unconscious about it. What I do know is when I was playing sports, I was trying to figure out how to keep my energy levels up, but because of how I ate, it would impact my performance so much. And I didn't even know why. So at that time, I would even be eating Taco Bell before practices. And think about how crazy that is. I would go into baseball practice in high school. I would slam a bunch of Taco Bell or like a burger at lunch, and then we would go out and try to practice, and I would feel sluggish or tired, and I don't know why. Right? Nobody teaches this stuff, and I feel like it's starting to change where you have more education around nutrition, which is insanely important about how to build a healthy relationship to it. But dude, back in like the 90s, there was no guidance on this stuff at all. So, not a lot of real great examples for me right there. Going ahead then, my lifting experience didn't start until my senior year of high school. So up until that point, I was all about relying on like talent and skill of the sport. And I was small at the time. I was like 115, 125 pounds all the way through high school, maybe like 5'6", 5'8". I didn't have a growth spurt until like senior year where I hit 6 foot. We started lifting into my senior summer for the first time. And I put on like 50 pounds, no lie. And so my body responded, but it was all very new. And then I started to continue to grow in college. So I had like a late growth spurt too. But lifting wasn't introduced to me until that time. And then in college, again, the story kind of continues. I was just going through and doing what I thought you were supposed to do. I went to school. I got a finance degree. My dad kind of encouraged that, being like, go into business, learn about this stuff. I wasn't following my passion. I didn't even know what my passion was at the time. I felt a little bit unconscious about certain things. And I did lift in college and train, but it was very random and it was sporadic. I didn't follow plans. If anything, I was like printing stuff off like the Spartan 300 workout, like on Men's Health, which, you know, if you know anything, isn't a good workout at all. There's nothing to it. You know, it's kind of random, but you know, you're doing what you can. But I was drinking a lot in college and, you know, kind of lost my way with training, got out of shape a little bit. And it wasn't until my senior year again in college that I started to lock in a little bit. But honestly, by accident, there was a cycling race at my school at Indiana University that got me into, called the Little 500, that got me into cycling. And my fraternity was, you know, trying to get back into the race and qualify. We didn't have a team, so we kind of pulled one together, and I was riding year round. So like that entire year, I was just training on a bike, like getting back into in good shape, building my endurance up, getting on the road, doing 50, 100-mile rides. And that got me pretty locked in. Like just doing that without, again, an understanding of nutrition. I wasn't taught still. But what I do remember is having that structure of the training program made me want to eat cleaner. Because every time I went onto the bike, I started to realize what foods would make me feel good on the bike and what would not. And obviously you go towards the stuff that's going to make you good. So there was a lot of lean chickens. There was a lot of rice and potatoes. And like, I would start to eat a little bit cleaner, in ways that made me feel good. But it was kind of an entry point back into wellness. But keep in mind, I was not lifting structured at this point. I was still kind of just random and doing more endurance events. And when I graduated college, getting back into corporates, things started to shift a little bit. Corporate was somewhat of a turning point for me because I take my first job, I get into cubicle life, and I'll be honest with y'all, I was depressed early. I was like, dude, this is not for me, man. Something just felt wrong for me. It didn't feel like it lined up for me. In my observation when I was in corporate, being very honest with you guys, I was there for, let's say 5 years. I was like in the corporate setting at a corporate headquarters, whether it be in a cubicle, an office, things like that. Is that I just saw people numbing themselves. And I started to realize what they were doing, that it was like on the weekend, you would go out Friday for happy hour and just drink and eat, and Saturday watch football and drink and eat, and Sunday just drink and eat. And then Monday would come around and you try to get back at it. And it was this cycle that just never ended. Like I would work out on Monday, I would work out on Tuesday, say I'd work out on Thursday, Friday, whatever. And then you just hammer yourself with drinking and greasy foods and fried foods. And then Monday you would try to get back into it, but you would be kind of recovering still from that full weekend. It was 3 days of just damage. And then Monday, I'm like, you don't feel like you're kicking things off to grow. You feel like you're trying to make up for that time. So it's like during the week, I would take 2 steps forward, and during the weekend, I would take like 4 steps back. And that's what it always felt like. I was like, dude, I'm on this yo-yo where I cannot move forward. And I started to get so frustrated with that, man. This was like a big unlock for me, like seeing that, recognizing that a lot of people that I was around, including senior leadership, by the way, just being honest. I'm just being honest, including senior leadership, would just not be happy, eat poorly, drink a ton, weren't taking care of their health mentally, physically, and just it was a lot of numbing and avoidance. And seeing that, I was like, I do not want to fall into this trap, because this is real life here too, man. I saw people get fired at that stage in the game when I got into sales, and I saw people put their life into this stuff and have that lifestyle of the drinking culture with work. And some of them got let go late in their careers. And I'll never forget one man actually dying from a heart attack upon getting the news, because his stress had taken over. And watching that and observing examples like that, like another senior leader, like flying back and forth from out of state into corporate every weekend and being stressed out and didn't have time for his wife or his kids because he was just constantly flying back and forth, and he didn't have time for himself. And he was also unhealthy, dropped a ton of weight. And I was like, this is not it. There was a big wake up call for me where I'm like, I got to take control of this, because like I'm in sales and I want to continue to do my job well, but I don't want to do it at the sacrifice of my health. And so this was a big catapult for me there. This was a big catalyst for me to make some changes. That said, I did not have good examples again. So I was looking online just like you guys. This is where I relate to y'all so heavy, because I was looking at this time. Keep in mind, I am working a 9 to 5. I am focused on sales. I am doing healthcare sales at the time. That is my life. That is my priority. That is what I'm studying. That is what I'm like executing on every single day. And so training, lifting, different programs to follow, different sequencing to follow, how to eat. I was not investigating that stuff. I would do it in my free time, but it was a casual hobby. So I went to the sources like the magazines. There wasn't influencing at the time, really. So I don't know if that was good or worse, but it would be celebrity workouts. It'd be online things that you would find. It would be like these DVDs that you could work out to and train alongside at home. There'd be some meal plans, but they were so strict, but it's what we had. So I took it upon myself at that time, because I was so confused. I just remember being so confused. I'm like, this magazine says this magazine says this person says this celeb says this, and they were always conflicting, right? It was like the whole thing. Remember when people were like, eggs are good, eggs are bad, carbs are good, carbs are bad, you should lift this much, you should do fasted cardio. Everything was just all over the place, man. I'm like, why can't I get a straight answer? Why can't I just get a program so I can put my head down and just live? Just tell me what to do. And everybody was conflicted. So I just took it upon myself to get certified. I went in to get a certification for personal training, not to be a personal trainer at the time, but to learn. I was like, I'm just going to go to the source then. These people are going to be all like this. I'm going to figure it out myself. So I went and I just put my head down into a book. I'm living in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time. And at night, I would just study personal training and just understand this stuff. Then I took it further. Once I got that certification, I got a certification as a health coach. I was like, let's learn a little bit more about the nutrition side of things and how this kind of works. And as I built that knowledge up, which was still like very introductory, I hired a coach at one point. There was like this big bodybuilder guy in the area, and I followed his program for a bit. Then I even followed programs like Insanity with Shaun T. Back in the day, I would like work out at home, right? Same thing that you're like doing at Tonal. I would like working out with us. Like I would work out at home and do some of these endurance workouts and follow the diet from like Beachbody. Like I did that. I would follow. What you learn with that too is like I got some results over 1 or 2 months. I lost some weight. I lost some body fat. I got in pretty good like endurance shape. But it wasn't sustainable, because diets like that, I was following this diet and it's just at a deficit. And so that was a lesson learned too. You kind of see this in the fitness space sometimes where programs will put someone onto a caloric deficit with general nutrition advice. So it wasn't, keep in mind, it wasn't personal for me. It wasn't like a personalized nutrition plan. It was if you weigh in this weight range and you're this height, you're going to follow these caloric guidelines. And when you do that, you're going to just be in deprivation mode. So you're going to see like weight loss, but eventually it catches up to you and it's not sustainable. So I learned from that. I was like, this is a short-term approach. But then I started to think, well, what do I do for years from now? Because I can't eat like this. I felt very deprived. You get results. I followed macros and I got some things done, but what's next, right? So this is where the evolution started to unfold, where I started to get addicted to training. I was like, all right, I'm seeing results. I see how these levers can kind of play a little bit. But I started to then hit the gym and get a little bit more serious with like just weightlifting. But I was making up some of my own programs. I would just like find things online. I would just like, it was a lot of trial and error, guys. It was a lot of trial and error. And if I'm being honest with you, at that time, I didn't know what I was doing, not to the degree that I do now. And I say that to y'all to understand that it's okay. I kind of come from a place, a philosophy as a coach, that it is okay to make mistakes. And this goes back to the early thing of everything's so packaged and neat and all that kind of stuff. But I really believe like we all learn in our own time. So you can get there faster with an understanding, with a great plan, great coaching. You can learn quicker and avoid a lot of these mistakes. But don't let the mistakes stop you from making progress, right? Don't let acting or appearing foolish or not knowing what you're doing or not having all the information stop you from building the habit, is my point. Just be open and be adaptable as you go. You know, you guys have better resources, especially if you're on Tonal. You have way better resources than I ever had. There's way more clarity that exists now than I ever had. And you can grab onto this stuff and get there quicker and learn a balanced training approach faster, you know, with better quality information than I feel like I ever had at the time. I feel like I was figuring it out all on my own with where I was at this space and time. But corporate. Woo! Corporate. All right. Let me digress here a little bit. Right around this time is I'm in sales. I've been there for 5 years in Charlotte, doing well professionally, but I was not happy. I remember I was not happy. Something was wrong with, like I'm very passion driven, guys. That's why I coach the way that I do. Like I'm mission driven. I wear my heart on my sleeve. And so if I don't believe in what we're doing, I really can't do it. And I started to I used to believe in what I was doing in healthcare. I really thought I was helping people. And it just started to shift where I was like, man, this is just another money grab. And it just lost my interest big time. It just couldn't align with me. And it was making me feel sick and tired. And so I was like, I hit this point where I knew I needed to do something different. And there had to be this transition into my life. But for the life of me, I had no idea what to do. I was a pretty insecure guy at the time. I was unconfident. I was uncertain. I was unsure. I didn't know what the next move was. I didn't know where I was going to take my career. I had these interests, but I didn't have courage to follow them. Like for example, I write down these goals, and they would be things like, I want to be in this level of shape. I want to be this kind of an athlete, maybe a model. I was interested in that. I was thinking about acting. Do I go take acting classes? But all those things felt like they were just so in the clouds. I had no examples. I'm in Chicago. I moved to Ohio. I moved to Indiana. I moved to North Carolina. I'm not in these scenes at all. So it felt like just a wish, you know? And again, no examples in my life of people that did this. And so I felt crazy for even thinking that. I'm like, dude, that stuff doesn't happen, you know? But I don't know. I just kept kind of hammering at it for some reason. And you know, I don't know if it was luck. I mean, there's always a little bit of luck involved, but I got asked to do this fashion show in Charlotte, and I kind of got signed as a model, even by accident. in this North Carolina agency, and it opened the door for me to land some jobs. And the biggest opportunity that I got, like, I get signed by this agency in North Carolina, like this smaller agency. I'm just doing small jobs, nothing crazy. I'm keeping my sales job at the same time. But there was one turning point. There was a big turning point where I got a phone call from my agency being like, Under Armour's doing an open call casting in Baltimore this weekend. And they're like, they never do this. They never do these open calls. So, you can go do this. And I was like, all right, let's go, man. Let's just see what happens. I was scared shitless, but I drove whatever the distance was from Charlotte to Baltimore. Let's call it like 6 hours, something like that. I don't even remember, but I drove a long way by myself, got this like random Airbnb, stayed on a couch, went to this casting. I was nervous as all hell. There's like hundreds of people in line for this casting. I walk up there. They measure you. They see what your sizes are. They try some photos with some of their clothes. I got this phone call. I was like, there's no way. There's like hundreds of people here. I got a phone call and ended up getting the job. And that was a big change in my modeling career that allowed me to kind of take off and do the things that I'm doing now, because that opened the gateway for some other opportunities. But while that was going down, I had a big life change where my father and my grandfather got sick. My father had a brain tumor that he was battling for about 10 years. We knew about it. It was stable, but he had this thing for 10 years that he was living with. And we he was for the most part fine, but, it was inoperable, and they were just trying to manage it so that he could keep a quality of life. And long story short, he had to have some surgery in this last year, that just, he never was the same after that. And he ended up, passing away at home. And I got this phone call when I was in Charlotte about the news. I flew back immediately, and that was that. I'll never forget that day. Of course, it was the most, I don't even know how to describe it. It changes your entire association with how you view the world and what you think matters. And I was numb for a long time after that, because seeing him, in the hospital and seeing that, and at that age too, I was young. I don't remember, 2016. So what was I? Let's say 27. Thinking about that, and he was my entire world, and not long after that, 2 months after, my grandfather, who was another huge role model in my life, like, he taught me, so much. I mean, he was one of the most incredible humans I've ever known. He got sick. He was old. He was in his years. I mean, he was 96 years old, somewhere around there, and lived a really long life. He just ended up getting sick when he took a visit to the hospital and just never recovered. And I was able to visit him before he passed and had some words with him, told him how much I loved him and cared for him. And when he passed, at the funeral, my brother and I went back to his house, and I remember having this moment with my brother where, we're thinking about both of them and what this meant. And as we're talking, the pain is indescribable, but we said to each other, we just came to this conclusion that these men taught us everything that we know about how to be good people, have integrity, have a strong work ethic, to honor your word. They really raised us in the right way. And we made a commitment that we would, from here on out, live our life in a way that would honor those two men to the highest level. We saw it as a choice that we could either feel this and take it down a negative road where we could be a victim and be sad for years and let it kind of define us and just kind of take it as a defeat, or we could take this and do things differently in life to honor who they were and what they meant to us. And that's what we did. And my brother and I, from that point forward, started to live life differently and from a different place. It was the most difficult thing I have ever been through in my life at that time. And it was also the greatest gift that they ever gave me, which is maybe strange to say, but it was a catalyst And it allowed me to step into myself differently and to make decisions differently. I was no longer scared of taking risks to go after things that I wanted to. I was more terrified of not taking those risks and ending up on my deathbed feeling like I didn't live and go after these things authentically and fully. And when I got there, that was the most powerful shift of my entire life, because there is a relationship with fear that exists with all of us. And what I have learned is that it never goes away. It's just a different relationship to it and a different perspective to it. And you change what you're more scared of. And I became more scared of regret than I was about acting foolish or making a mistake or failing. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to go after exactly what I want to go after. It really was that simple. It was a simple realization that I will end up exactly where they are at some point. I will be in this deathbed at some point. So how am I going to walk away? How am I going to go about my life? It's a huge shift. So that year after that was, it was, I don't know how to describe it. I felt numb. I didn't know what all this meant. I was processing. Emotionally, I felt disconnected. Truly, really, my brother and I talk about this. Like, I really honestly felt numb for a while, for years after that. Like, it hurt so much that after that, I just kind of felt numb, and I just started to go trying to find answers. So, I got this call from a modeling agency to say that you could go model internationally in South Africa. And this was a big shift to where I am now. And this does relate to training, by the way. It gets back to that. I'm working in sales though at the time, and I had this opportunity of like, yo, you got a call. You could go to South Africa and model for 3 months in their season, and then you can kind of do some international work. But I'd have to leave my job. Excuse me. I'd have to leave my job. But I took that opportunity. I ended up talking to a mentor, and he was like, yo, this job's always going to be here. You might as well like go after some of these things that you really want to do. So I took that leap of faith, and I moved to Cape Town, South Africa, and I was scared shitless doing it. But again, I was driven with a different sense of purpose. I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but this wasn't blind, by the way. I think this is an important thing to mention too, because following your passions often gets romanticized. It's just like, I quit my job and I went to go do this. And I think it's very important to understand this, that for 10 years, financially, I was saving money every single day. I was methodically saving a percentage, at least 10% of my paycheck for every single paycheck that I got since I got my first job at 21. I was stashing away cash. I was paying off my student debts. By the time I had left for Africa, I paid off all my student loans. I had zero debt to my name. I managed my finances appropriately. I also planned in that year after my father passed to make a transition. So I was saving money even more intentionally so that I could live off of that without tapping into some savings. I was preparing myself with, what are the goals that you have? And what are you trying to get from this? And I would write down, like, you know, I really got honest with myself. I was like, I don't know how this all connects yet, but I want to be involved in training. I want to learn the fitness space. I want to help people get in great shape. I do want to model. I want to see the world. I want to travel more. I want to get into exploring improv comedy, becoming an actor, becoming a pro model across the world. Like, these things just started to evolve. And then I got into personal development type things. So when I went to Africa, I did have a plan, and I also gave myself a cutoff that I was like, I'm going to take this leap, but it's calculated. Again, financially, I can be okay. I can support myself during this time. So it wasn't blind. It wasn't irresponsible. It wasn't chaotic. I didn't own a home at the time. I just had a rental agreement. So I broke that with no problem. I went to South Africa, and I was like, I'm going to give myself 6 months. And if something doesn't work in 6 months, I'm going to come back and I can go back and look for another job. But I'm going to give myself this time. So 3 months went by, 6 months went by, and I ended up moving back home. But while I was in South Africa, there was a plan. Now, going back to training, South Africa to me was a spiritual journey. And this taught me a lot. When we talk about training, there needs to be a balance that's understood, that it's not just about lifting weights. It's not just about being intense and, you know, I don't know, angry, destructive, and just like kind of going after stuff with a rage. Like I like lifting angry, but like, dude, there is a balance that needs to happen. And I never tapped into things like meditation and learning to speak to yourself and be with yourself until I went to South Africa. And for some reason, I was drawn into these yoga studios, and I found this one that was incredible. And we're talking like true yoga, like real practices. They would encourage a moving meditation. And at the end of class, there was always an emphasis in Shavasana to just relax. They didn't rush you out the door. There was like 30 minutes of just absolute time where you could just be with yourself. They had the music, the entire room would just sit there and you would just be with your thoughts. And in the early phases of that, I remember these thoughts being very chaotic in my own head. It was hard for me to sit in that meditative state, and I didn't know what to think about because I had all these different thoughts popping up, like these problems, problem, and like all these different things popping up. They felt convoluted and tangled. But I remember just saying and talking to some of the coaches there, and they were like, just stay patient, just keep coming in with it. It's going to get clearer and clearer. And they were right. Over the months that I did that, it started to get more and more quiet and isolated. The thoughts became more organized, and they started to become more apparent that the things that would pop up in your head were more things that you had to take care of. They were things that you had to address. You had to make peace with. You had to take some action on. You had to clear up in your own life in real time. And so as you did that, then every time that you would go meditate, it would get calmer and calmer and more relaxed. And so I learned a lot from that practice, the importance of that, because that would just recharge you, would allow you to get in touch with yourself. And it also helped me make very important decisions. So to be able to sit with yourself and be honest with yourself and analyze what action I need to take to feel good and aligned with myself, I think is one of the best things that you can teach yourself in your life and in your training journey. There needs to be a balance for equal parts, you know, intense. There needs to be calm. That's the yin and the yang. And it's so important to remember that. Now, going from South Africa, you know, I was still lifting, but I was doing mostly endurance, a lot of running. I was vegan at the time, if you can believe that. I was still playing with my food and what worked for me. So I was like eating less. I was pretty skinny at the time. I was lifting, but no solid programming. So I was smaller, in shape, but smaller. And again, it was more of a mental kind of practice for me when I was over there. I moved back to Charlotte, and to kind of fast forward, I was trying to figure out what to do next. And I got this opportunity to sign in New York with a modeling agency. And that was the time where I was like, you know what, I'm going to keep this going. And so training then led me to a gym called Tone House in New York. And this absolutely changed my approach to how I lift. This got me into big time performance weightlifting. I became a coach there for about 5 years, working with some of the most insane athletes. I mean, these people are aggressive, man. The training there is aggressive. The coaches there, like Alonzo Wilson is a huge mentor of mine. James McMillan is an absolute beast of an athlete. I mean, I've never seen someone lift so much weight so effortlessly and at full range. I mean, this dude is squatting like 6, 7, I don't know how much weight. It's insane. I've seen him do a Bulgarian with like 300 pounds. It's wild. So, you know, you see this and you're surrounded by this, and it changed my view of what difficult is. And so my philosophy of coaching, a lot of it was shaped there because it changed what I view of what is considered hard. And it was a lesson in mental toughness and building true mental toughness. Excuse me as I do this, man. I'm a little sick, but we're all good. Okay. But it was a lesson in like mental toughness because the workouts were hard. They got you stronger. They got you faster. It was athletic conditioning, kind of football style training. So you had strength and conditioning type classes. But the sequencing was so difficult that you had to tap into something mentally to be able to get through it. And the whole design was that if I do this, it's not about doing it alone. It's about doing it with people around you. So you would train with people that were even stronger than you, that had a higher energy, that were just incredible. And you would just feed off of this energy. And it was like this team support system. So you realized what you could tap into and the levels that you could get to when you were in that environment. And that takes you to a different place that you don't even realize yet until you feel that. And it kind of raises, you know, what you see as your ceiling. And so knowing that and learning that and becoming that, not just temporarily, but like embodying this mentality it changed my entire viewpoint on everything. Because there's also, with strength training, there's a scientific approach that's very like, this is proven method, and these gets you certain results. There's also a mental way to train that is like, it's not necessarily the most scientific sound way, but like this is going to push you mentally to show you what you're absolutely capable of. And a good example of that is honestly like someone like David Goggins. That dude trains for mental toughness like I've never seen before. I don't know if his approaches are the most scientifically correct. I think the dude overtrains personally, but you cannot say shit about his mental capacity and his ability to push through fatigue and just toughness. I mean, the dude is tough as nails. And so there's something about that type of training too, where you just go through hard shit and you prove to yourself what you can endure, what you can push through. And then if you can learn that and take that into your training, man, it gets you to a different level. So you fast forward to tonal now, and I would say my journey has changed to a more balanced approach where I'm trying to figure out, because what I was doing with strength training, I was kind of beating myself down to a point. It got to a point where I was like overtraining, doing too much. And when I was at tonal, I was like, I need to find something that's more balanced and sustainable for myself. So I started to balance like more of the science with the art of things and the engagement that I like to do, so that I could find a rhythm that I can establish where I can put my energy into this, but it's more efficient, it's more time efficient, it's more conscious, it's a little bit more focused, and I don't feel like I'm beating myself down. And that's where I've gotten to now. So it's a lot more fatigue management and doing less, but somehow getting more. Because if I can conserve my energy and channel my energy into exactly what I want to do, I can get more from it. There's something very important to learn there, that for years I was kind of doing so much. I was running while I was lifting, and I was doing 2-hour sessions in the gym, and then I would go run. So I'd be training for like 3 or 4 hours a day because I just like to move. I didn't follow programs really. I was just like, I feel good today, so let's go do this today. This feels fresh, so let's lift this today. I wasn't following progressive, systematic approaches. I was just moving. And I think I had a lot of energy as a kid and when I was younger, so that's all well and good. But you get to a point where I'm like, I want to, that if you can imagine that if you can get really clear on your outcomes, then you can take all this energy that you were kind of dispersing to all these things, and you can take 100% of that and channel it into each repetition in the gym. It's way more force and way more productive now. So it's like an energy conservation where I had like almost energy leakage. Like if you can imagine, a kind of a crude example, if you have 100% battery throughout the day, but if I were to do all these different activities and I gave like 2% to this, I gave 3% to this, 4% to this, a little bit to, I went to the gym in the morning, I did these random activities, and then I go run, and that's all in a given day. I deplete that battery, right? And it's spread to all these different points. But what if I put it just into an hour-long session where I took 100% of that battery or, that energy into each set and each rep? It gets much more intense. It gets much more focused. It gets much more dialed in. And so you're taking that energy into the areas that you want to develop instead of spreading it to others that are just random. That's kind of where I've gotten to now. So a lot to say, and this is where I'm going to kind of close it with some things that I've, maybe some things I've learned about wellness to tie it all together. There's always a lot more to talk about, but these are kind of my priorities as I see them right now today in my own life. One, establish a routine that you can enjoy and that you can hold. Build your frequency. This is one of the most important things that I could say to someone that is starting out, and even someone that is trying to just establish their pattern, is that your routine through life is going to evolve. Like what you are training for may evolve, whether it be for strength, performance, hypertrophy, body recomposition, etc. But establish the days. So you have a ceiling and you have a floor that you're willing to tolerate. My ceiling is 4 days a week, or I'm sorry, my floor is going to be 4 days a week. My ceiling might be 6, right? So I'm always going to train 4 days a week. Minimum. My ceiling is going to be the 6. I need some days for recovery, right? So that gives you some leeway of like, as these programs evolve and your interests evolve, I know, but I'm always going to hit 4. I'm not going to do more than 6. I'm going to be right in that wheelhouse no matter what. That's the thing. Number 2, train in phases. Small degrees of changes and not massive corrections. I'm training for the long term. So I want subtle adjustments, and I want to do things that are going to add up over the years. So like I get very locked into the style of training that I am in. I believe consistency always wins. I want to develop programs with a long-term vision over short-term outcomes. That is what I'm all about at this phase in my life. Take your time, be patient, and be aggressive at the same time. 3, establish routine. Practice for your mental health. Establish a practice for your mental health. This cannot be neglected, especially if you're doing things like very intense training that is very physical. You got to take care of the mental, no matter what you're doing. And it's not, it's talked about, but especially in terms of from a male perspective, as men, this is neglected way too often, and it turns into ego and it turns into destructive behavior. Learn to be honest with yourself. Meet your trauma head on, talk to somebody about it, go to therapy. This is a strength. Addressing things that you battle with in your own head and just ignoring them is not strong. It will show itself in other ways, and you will push it onto other people that you care about. You will push away relationships. Manage it. Learn to build a relationship with it, understand it, face yourself, and build a routine for your mental health. Learn to sit in silence, journal, go to float tanks, go to yoga practices. Do what works for you, but find a way to manage your mental side of things and create stillness, calmness, and tranquility, and learn to be honest with yourself. It is a huge gift. Nutrition. Find sustainability. Personalize your way of eating. It's the same thing that I talk about from the training side. I believe in counting macros to an extent. To give you a perspective, I think doing a period of time, whether it be 1 month, 3 months, a year, whatever works for you, but at least 1 to 3 months, stick to a plan that is very tight on your macros. Weigh your food. Understand what different sizes and portions look like. Learn how to shop for different things on your grocery list. Like, it is such a massive skill. And see how your body responds and feels. Then as you get that down, you can start to branch out from there, but continue to refer back to these macro guidelines. So I'm at a point now where I kind of follow this 80-20 rule. And if I'm trying to be really tight, I go to like a 90-10. I don't restrict myself heavily, but I understand my parameters. So it's just the way that it works. I know that if I eat poorly, if I have greasy foods, if I have fried foods, if I drink a lot, then I'm going to get shitty results physically. It's just going to happen. That's not emotional. That's binary. It's objective, right? This is the scientific part. So if I want to get tighter, if I want to get my body comp down, if I want to look a little bit more shredded, if I want to put on muscle, there are just simple laws of numbers that I got to follow. There's just certain things that I got to do. So I play a mental game with myself where I'm like, I want the challenge, man. I think the discipline and finding an art in that discipline of doing things that are difficult, I get really into that. It's like a mental challenge for myself for a period of time. So I give myself these little rules where like 80-20, if during the week, Monday through Friday for sure, I am cooking my own food. I am making my own meals. They're whole foods. They're lean meats, lean proteins. They're good carbs, healthy fats. I cook with oil. I don't cook with butter. I know where the food is coming from. Then I have this leeway that during the week, I can have one meal with friends, like a social thing where I can just like let myself eat. So it might be a date night with my wife, like on a Friday. We always do kind of a fun meal. Or if I'm socializing with friends, we're going out on Saturday. Like that's going to be my thing. So you can be free, you can be loose, and you can just eat good food. And it won't have a detriment. Like you're like, it's okay. Again, when we're talking about long-term, dude, I think that feeds the soul. So there's this balance that you can have. It's just that I have a rule that when I'm alone, when it's just me in my routine, I am clean, I am prepped. Last part, preventative wellness. And what I mean by that is this is kind of a new thing that I've established for myself, but this is about taking care of yourself because I firmly believe, and I have learned, again, working in healthcare and going through kind of what I've learned in this industry, there's not great preventative measures that are really given to us in our healthcare system. It's just sadly not there. And so take it into your own hands. And what I've established for myself are a couple things. I recommend biannual blood work. So just to check your levels, especially as you get over 30, I think this is something that should at least be done once a year, if not twice a year, to see where things are and any deficiencies. Annual blood work or twice a year is going to allow you to figure out any imbalances. So one, that's great for personalized supplementation. So if you figure out like, hey, I have a vitamin D deficiency, which is like very common, for example, like I have that, right? Especially when the sun goes down. All right, well then let's supplement with some vitamin D. But personalized supplementation is massively important. This isn't just about like doing a stack that I do or that your favorite influencer does or celebrity. It's figuring out what you are lacking with from your nutrition, from your normal food. Priority one is get your nutrients from your food, and then supplements are meant to be there for support for deficiencies, and we can figure that out with blood work. It's also great for men to understand their testosterone levels as they age, so you can pay attention to that. And it's good to pay attention for any disease prevention. I'd rather know ahead of time and as early as possible, right? That if things come up, or at least for peace of mind. Two is biannual gut health testing, or at least once a year, if not twice. I have gotten more informed about gut health, and it is something that I absolutely highly recommend that everybody start to pay attention to. This has to do with our microbiome in our gut and the ability that food and fiber can have on our health. It plays a massive role in our metabolism, in our mood, in our ability or susceptibility to depression. And you can change your ability to gain weight, lose weight, are very directly tied to your gut health. So you can change some things knowing where you are deficient with your gut health as well, in those areas. It's very important. So those are my recommendations. That's kind of the lessons that I have learned. Again, there's a lot more to talk about with this stuff, but I hope that this is helpful. The biggest thing is go through this journey, make mistakes. You can be foolish. Just learn and adjust as you go. Just do not quit when you are on this. This is one of the most important things that I think you can master, because the more in tune you are, look, when you lift, you feel strong. When you do things that are challenging to you and you overcome them, you feel confident. When you do it more and more consistently, it is anchored and it is embodied, and it changes how you walk, how you talk, how you represent yourself, how you carry yourself into rooms. And the more that you can do this, I think you can give more and be more from a place of service. You can give more to your family. You can be a better and stronger leader. You can feel your best as you go out and attack all these goals that you have, and you can go after things, and you can do it in a very balanced approach. So I encourage you to continue to stay on this journey, to find your route, to pay attention to your mental health. Do not neglect it. And as you continue to train and evolve, the best thing that you can do is help other people do the exact same. Be a leader in your community. All right, there you go, guys. I will see you next time on Athlete's Pursuit.